Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede. It was a wild week in Tallahassee where the legislature not only rejected Governor Ron DeSantis' proposal on immigration, but instead passed its own bill, which allocates more than $500 million to help law enforcement on immigration, increases the penalties for illegal immigrants who commit crimes, requires the death penalty for any undocumented migrant who commits a capital offense, ends in-state tuition for undocumented kids, and creates an immigration czar under the elected ag commissioner to coordinate law enforcement with federal authorities. And it is that last part in particular that angers the governor. In his proposal, DeSantis wanted the immigration czar's power and all the money that goes with it to go to his office. DeSantis promised to veto the bill and went on an all-out attack against Senate President Ben Albritton and House Speaker Danny Perez.
So under their bill, the massive numbers of illegals in Florida will remain. You are not going to see a meaningful dent in that. You either want to solve the problem or you don't. You know, do you just want to run and complain about it, or do you actually want to solve it?
Now, in a few minutes, we will speak to House Speaker Danny Perez to get his reasons as to why the legislature believes their approach is the right one. But first, here's what Senate President Ben Albritton said during the special session about why he was rejecting the governor's bill.
Senators, sometimes leadership isn't about being out front on an issue. It's actually about following the leader you trust. For my part, I trust President Trump.
And there is the key word, trust. The legislature does not trust Ron DeSantis. They believe he is out for himself and himself alone. Here is another clip from that DeSantis press conference where he explains why he wants the legislature to give him the power and the $350 million that goes along with it to have his own foreign deportation program.
If you intercept them on the sea, you can give them the Coast Guard, they take them back. If they make it to the shore, then all of a sudden our guys can't really do anything. You got to turn them over. They'll be deputized. They'll be able to make the same decisions that a Border Patrol or ICE agent will. And then we can have our guys just take them back to Haiti or Bahamas or wherever they're coming from, right on the spot.
That notion that you can grab someone physically in the United States, throw them on a plane, and send them to another country right on the spot is laughably ridiculous. But DeSantis knows it sounds good. It sounds tough, and there will be people cheering him on. But legislators argue it is emblematic of the governor's approach: act tough and do little. Remember the stunt in 2022 when DeSantis secretly flew 49 migrants from Texas to Martha's Vineyard? Well, State Senator Jason Pizzo questioned what DeSantis has done since then, with the tens of millions of dollars allocated to him to remove migrants from Florida.
Guess how many unauthorized, criminal, illegal, whatever we're calling them, guess how many with those tens of millions of dollars, guess how many illegal immigrants have been transported since Martha's Vineyard, September 14th, 2022? Anybody want to take a guess now that we're in excess of $100 million spent on illegal immigration in Florida and the unauthorized alien transport program? Zero people.
It also came out during the special session that the DeSantis administration has only used the E-Verify system to issue sanctions against just 8 or 9 businesses in the past 3 years. Which brings us to the case of Pinellas County Sheriff's Deputy Michael Hartwick. The 51-year-old deputy was killed when an undocumented migrant hit him with the front-end loader he was operating under a state road contract. The DeSantis administration had cleared the Honduran migrant under the E-Verify system. In the 2+ years since the deputy was killed, DeSantis has done nothing to sanction the company that hired the undocumented worker or investigate why the undocumented worker was given the clearance by his administration. The day after the legislature passed their bill, I sat down with House Speaker Danny Perez. I asked him why he believes his approach was the right one.
Our proposal disincentivizes illegal immigrants from coming to the state of Florida. We also increase penalties for the criminals that are illegal aliens that are in the state of Florida. We made sure that any minimum maximum is automatically a maximum. We made sure that the death penalty for any illegal alien is purposeful if they commit murder or they rape children. I mean, we are truly disincentivizing illegal immigration. At the same time, there's a funding portion to this. We have to work with the federal government. We're going to support President Trump. We put over $500 million to make sure that the state has the right resources in order to help the federal government expedite the illegal immigration crisis solution. So there are many parts of this bill that was officially passed at the House and the Senate that I believe will disincentivize illegal immigrants from coming to the state of Florida. Now the question is, what's the disagreement between the legislature and the governor, and how do we reach a solution?
So the governor says that just the day after you passed the bill, he said, your bill won't work, is weaker than what we have today. And he said what your bill does is, in fact, turn Florida into a de facto sanctuary state. Your response?
I would love for him to explain what portion of our bill allows him to make a statement like that. That's just inaccurate. I mean, Jim, we have to talk reality. Every single Republican except one voted for this bill in the House. Every single one except one voted for this bill in the House.
Well, what he said is, by the way, he addressed that. He said it's a leadership-driven thing, and they really threaten their members. Get in line, or you're going to lose your committee. That's what the governor said. Did you threaten your members?
That's a rhetoric that's completely inaccurate. If they wanted, members can vote however they want. Here's what I would tell the constituents that believe in this bill, and some may not, and that's okay. But the ones that believe in this bill, I mean, are you going to trust every single state representative that you voted for, except one? Every single one voted for it, or a guy who lost in a primary just about a year ago to the president of the United States, and one of the greatest presidents this country has ever had. I mean, this is now he's saying that this is a weak bill. He says weak. There's nothing weak about this bill. Absolutely nothing. The problem is that he has 2 years left, and unfortunately, he is trying to stay in a place of relevance. And our bill is, quite frankly, just stronger than his. And that's unfortunate, because I look at him as a partner. He's a co-equal branch of government. I know he wants to solve for illegal immigration just as much as I do. But at this point, there's no time for pride and ego. We just have to find a solution that gets us to the end point. And the governor's getting in the way of stopping illegal immigration in the state of Florida.
It's not just the governor. Former Speaker Jose Oliva last night put out on Twitter saying, is this what the historic Florida House has been reduced to? Members, something is terribly awry and you're being led astray. This is not the way. How would you respond to former Speaker Oliva?
I didn't see that, but he's entitled to his opinion, just like everyone else, and I'm glad he's able to voice that.
I think I want to drill down on the bill, and one of the key differences is one of the things your bill does is to shift responsibility for immigration enforcement and the office, or the creation of a immigration czar, or a chief immigration officer, so to speak, from the governor's office into the Commissioner of Agriculture. Why did you think that it was best to have these services, this enforcement, under the Department of Agriculture as opposed to the governor?
That's a great question, Jim. That's a great question. Here's what the governor wanted in his proposal. The governor wants to be able to appoint the immigration czar, is how he quotes it. He wants to appoint some bureaucrat inside his office, not elected by the people, so he has all the power. That's what this is about. This is about Ron DeSantis wanting to be the deporter in chief, and the legislature wanting that to be President Trump. We are solving for this problem through the eyes of President Trump. DeSantis wants everything for himself. That's what's happening here. What we did in our bill is the complete opposite. The reason we chose the Commissioner of Agriculture are for several reasons. Number one, he is the only cabinet member that is currently in office. The Ag Commission, the Attorney General obviously went to the U.S. Senate and Ashley Moody, and the CFO just won a primary in Jimmy Patronis to go to Congress. The reason that's important is I wanted it to be a position that could be held accountable. I wanted the people to hold this person accountable. If in 2 years, when Will Simpson doesn't do a good job, or whoever the Commissioner of Agriculture is doesn't do a good job, the people can vote them out. We have to be able to hold these positions accountable, not have some bureaucrat that's appointed by the governor that can't answer to the people. We have to answer to the people at the end of the day. That's why we chose the Commissioner of Agriculture, someone that can be accountable and held accountable by the people. The governor wants the power from A to Z for himself. What we want is we want to give it to the President of the United States, and we're going to obviously work in conjunction and follow his lead. He's the president of the free world. But the difference here is the ego of the governor is not allowing him to let go of that power. This isn't about power. This is about making the right decision, making sure that the people can hold this position accountable.
It seems as if you don't trust the governor to have expanded powers. Are you concerned with how the governor has used those powers up to now with regard to immigration?
The results on immigration have been more of a headline than a reality. I do not want illegal immigrants coming into the state of Florida. I do not want to incentivize them. I want to work with ICE. I want to work with President Trump. The membership agrees with that. That's why we're giving it. That's exactly why our bill is different than his. E-Verify, you're right, Jim. That is part of it. Look, I voted for E-Verify. I believe in E-Verify. But are we actually going through with the law that the members voted for, that the governor signed? That's a question that's up in the air. That should not be up in the air. We should have answers to that.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. Do you believe the governor has adequately been enforcing the laws that you've given him so far?
On immigration, that's something that we're looking into. The E-Verify point that you just brought up, we're looking into that as we speak, just to make sure that it's actually being implemented. But as of right now, Jim, you're absolutely right. It looks as though the governor is not doing his job.
Also, the amount of money that's been allocated to him, I think, it came out I was watching the Senate side as well as the House, that we've spent tens of millions of dollars, and other than the immigrants or migrants that were flown to Martha's Vineyard, since then, there hasn't been any alien transport going on. Was part of your concern that you didn't trust him with an additional $350 million for that task?
It's not even just about the governor, Jim. It's about whoever he's assigning with these responsibilities. We had those flights from Texas to Martha's Vineyard with tens of millions of dollars that we sent. And by the way, look, it caught the attention of the media, which was important. It disincentivized illegal immigrants from coming to the state of Florida. And look, I thought it was a good thing that all of a sudden people in Martha's Vineyard and some of these left-leaning states picked up on the headline that said, hey, we need to be careful how we react to illegal immigration, because we're about to receive a lot more illegal immigrants in our own backyard, which is not something that they wanted. So I understand that there was some sort of success in doing so. We paid tens of millions of dollars for those flights from Texas to Martha's Vineyard. Meanwhile, we have illegal immigrants in our own state. The governor needs to worry about our own state, not Texas and not Martha's Vineyard. In this state, we should not have illegal immigration. How do we stop that? And I don't want to give it to some bureaucrat that's appointed by Governor Ron DeSantis. I want to give it to someone that can be held accountable by the people. By the people. That's the most important part.
What do you see the role of local law enforcement is going forward?
The role of local law enforcement is to enforce the law of the land at the state level, at the local level, at the federal level. The difference between the governor's proposal and our bill is we are entrusting ICE and the federal government with the deportation. The law enforcement portion is they capture, and then they have to give them over to ICE. And that's always been the law. And it's something that ICE agrees with. The President of the United States agrees with that. The problem we were having before the president was in office is local law enforcement was doing their job. State law enforcement was doing their job. The problem was ICE wasn't coming and picking up the illegal immigrants that committed crimes and deporting them. That was a problem. We no longer have that problem. We have a president that is going to follow through with making sure that illegal immigrants are not in this country. And so the role of local law enforcement is to make sure that people aren't committing crimes and that they are the enforcers on the street. Once that happens, ICE should pick them up and send them back to the country of origination. That is what should be happening. The governor, he wants his own police force. He wants to send his own planes. I don't know if it's his plane, but he wants some planes that belong to the state to be able to deport the people that are being captured by his own state guard back to their country. I mean, look what happened when President Trump sent a plane of illegal immigrants back to Colombia, and Colombia sent them back. Colombia ended up folding. They folded because it was against the president of the United States. That's the man that I trust to do the job as well. That's the difference. I trust the ICE director, Holman. I trust President Trump. I want them to be able to do their job. We will do ours. We will capture them. And the moment that we capture them, we'll put them in our jails, and ICE will take it from there. That's the difference.
Do you expect President Trump to weigh in on this dispute between the legislature and the governor?
I don't know. We have obviously had conversations with the White House, but I'm sure that Governor DeSantis has as well. I'm not running from that. But those are ongoing conversations.
When we come back, we talk about the in-state tuition for undocumented kids. Stay with us. Welcome back. One question I keep asking in this immigration debate is whether you can be tough on immigration without also being cruel. Cruelty appears to be winning, as most Republicans voted immediately to repeal the law allowing undocumented kids to pay in-state tuition in Florida. The bill granting them in-state tuition was passed with broad bipartisan support in 2014. And as a reminder, here is what then State Representative Jeanette Nunez said about it as she urged her colleagues to support these kids.
And I stand here today and I firmly believe that this bill balances fairness with pragmatism, compassion with common sense. And to grandstand and inject political rhetoric in this debate is, in my opinion, shameful and pathetic. There are children, through no fault of their own, who live in our state, are educated in our public schools, and yet, after investing tens of thousands of dollars to educate them, we shut the door on their future. We no longer treat them like Floridians.
Today, of course, Nunez is DeSantis' lieutenant governor, and after those clips resurfaced last week, she issued a statement that read in part, "It's been more than a decade since this law was passed. Our country looks very different today than it did then. It's time to repeal this law. It has served its purpose and run its course." Look, if Republicans want to repeal this bill, that's within their right. But rather than pull the rug out from under these kids immediately, the legislature could allow those kids, and only those kids who are currently in college, to finish out their remaining 2 or 3 years. In fact, in December, Senate President Ben Albritton said allowing kids already in the system to continue with their education would be the right thing to do. And here's the amazing part. He voted against the bill granting in-state tuition in 2014, but he recognized that you can't just take away something that the state gave its word to provide. Here's what he said in December.
I would hope the Senate would consider the idea of a sunset, so there'd be some level of predictability. But if you and your family have built the idea of going to college around this, and you built your budget around it, then since a sunset would make sense to me.
One of the more powerful moments last week on this issue came from Republican State Senator Alexis Calatayud. She's from Miami, and she supported the immigration bill except for the part about in-state tuition, arguing even President Donald Trump has spoken about wanting to protect the Dreamers.
It is conflicting, not only for my district and for many in my community, but from my personal conviction that affordable, accessible education gives every child, regardless of their lot in life, a shot at the American dream and the opportunity to realize their highest potential. The revolution of common sense is not without compassion. I commit to my constituents to champion this cause, to advocate without ceasing for the realization of these promises.
As it stands right now, it does not appear that Republicans will have the votes in the Senate to override DeSantis' expected veto. It is also clear that if they were to allow those kids currently in college to keep paying in-state tuition, they would get Calatayud's vote and probably a handful of Democrats. The problem seems to be they are afraid of being labeled by DeSantis as weak, so they have to show how tough they are at the expense of a few thousand kids currently in college. Now, I asked Speaker Perez if he would consider keeping in-state tuition in order to override DeSantis' veto.
Allowing illegal immigrants to have in-state tuition, which essentially is subsidized by the government, is not an option in the Florida House of Representatives.
So you're okay if the bill goes down, and if the Senate's unable to override the veto, if that's the issue? That's
not the issue that we're in, Jim. President Albritton and I are in constant communication. We're lockstep with one another. We're working together to see how and in what other ways we can get to a final resolution here, but that is not one of the discussions that we're having.
I'm curious, does the state of Florida believe that its word should be honored?
I don't know. I don't understand what you mean by that, Jim.
Well, in 2014, the state of Florida gave families the assurance that if their kids do well, get accepted to a state school, college, or university, that they could pay in-state tuition. And I understand wanting to disincentivize it going forward, not to have it be a draw. But for those kids who the state of Florida made a commitment to and said, you can have in-state tuition if you do well, if you go through the process of getting good grades, getting accepted to a school, maintaining good grades and obviously good behavior while you're in school, that you should have in-state tuition. Why shouldn't the state of Florida continue to honor that agreement that it made with those kids?
The reason our in-state tuition is lower than any private school in the state of Florida is because the government subsidizes that. And what you're saying is that an illegal immigrant that came into this country, which is here illegally, should receive the benefit of the government paying for their education. I disagree with that, Jim. I think what we're saying is any person that's in the state that's not legally residing in the state of Florida has to pay the full freight of the tuition of whatever school they go to. If someone from New York wants to move to the state of Florida and come to the University of Florida, they have to pay a full freight. I'm saying the same thing for anyone that is not a legal resident of the state of Florida. Those are taxpayer dollars that I've been entrusted with in our budget, and we give it to our state universities, but it's for the benefit of the taxpayers that are legally residing in the state of Florida, the people that you are mentioning, although I'm sure that they are going to the schools and many of them are doing well. They are not legally residing in the state of Florida, and they should not be receiving in-state tuition.
I guess I want to get a sense, too, of the amount of pressure that is trying to be applied to you from the governor. And you spoke about this during the initial special session that was convened. You said, in the last week, attempts have been made to bully members of this House, including sending out mass emails and text messages with members' personal cell phone numbers on them. Attacks on this body, attacks on all of you are not acceptable. Do you think the governor has been acting honorably in how he's dealt with this issue?
Jim, many have called this debate a feud, and it's not a feud. It's a disagreement, and disagreements are healthy for democracy. I never run away from a disagreement, and everyone can explain their side and let the chips fall where they may. But he isn't able to simply have a disagreement. What he did was he sent emails and text messages into the districts and the constituents of the members of the House of Representatives with their personal cell phone numbers on there and began to attack them. That is unheard of for a governor to do. Unheard of. It's beneath the dignity of that office. And the fact that he did that is something that I was never going to stand up for. You don't do that. You can disagree with me and you can come after me, as they've been doing since the beginning of time. That's okay. That's all right. But have a civil debate on why the disagreement is happening. Sending text messages to people's personal cell phone numbers into their districts is unheard of. It's actually, it's sad. It's sad that that's where he has arrived. It's not something that I've seen any other governor do. And I was never going to stand up for that. I'm not going to allow him to continue to punch the members of the House of Representatives. That's not something that we stand for in the House. You
said earlier that you think this is him trying to fight for relevance. It's also that the legislature really has never said no to him before. I think that's what's caught so many people's attention. I mean, you've overridden 2 vetoes already of his dealing with budgetary issues. I'm curious, do you think that that there will be other vetoes of his that you will go back and look at in the days ahead, in the weeks ahead?
All options are on the table, Jim. But at the end of the day, I'm able to be mature enough to recognize that we have to solve for the crisis of illegal immigration, and it's something that the governor agrees with as well. I'm open to having that conversation with him whenever it is that he is willing to do so. Now, my door is always open. I hope that it can eventually get there, and it's the discussion that we're having right now. And President Albritton, who's been a great partner in the Senate and is a man of character, is also willing to have that conversation. You know, when and where that happens is something that's yet to be seen.
We'll be right back after the break. Well, that's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.